On the edge of the haunted forest known as the Silent Forest stood a small village called Elmira. The inhabitants lived a peaceful life until one night heavy rain fell as if the sky was wailing. It was on that night that a baby was found at the village gate, wrapped in a shabby dark black cloth. No one knew where the baby came from. He did not cry, just stared straight with heart-piercing purple eyes. The baby was named Lilithra by an old shaman named Moretta. She cared for the baby like her own grandchild. But since childhood, Lilithra showed worrying signs. The animals feared her, the plants wilted to the touch, and nightmares often haunted other children whenever she was present near them. Nevertheless, Moretta still loved Lilithra like her own flesh and blood. She was sure there was a hidden light in the little girl's darkness. But the village didn't agree. They began to ostracize Moretta and Lilithra. And on Lilithra's 12th birthday, an incident changed everything. A house burned for no reason, and all the fingers pointed at Lilithra. The residents forced Moretta to give up the girl. Moretta refused and was eventually driven away with Lilithra to the edge of the forest. It was there, away from the crowds, that they lived in isolation. The Silent Forest was no ordinary place. It was alive. Leaves whispered, roots moved, and the sky was always gray. Lilithra had grown up there, learning to read from Moretta's old books and speak with wind and shadow. On the night of the dark moon, as Moretta fell ill and could only lie weak, Lilithra heard a voice from deep in the woods. The voice called her name, cooed at her, offered answers to all her suffering. Curiosity and anger led Lilithra to step deeper into the forest. She arrived at an old tree blackened like charcoal. There, the voice merged in the form of a shadow that had no face. The entity called itself the Third Self and offered the power to protect Moretta and take revenge on the village. Lilithra refused at first, but as Moretta breathed her last the next day, Lilithra's heart sank. She returned to the tree and accepted the Dark Pact. With new power flowing in her blood, Lilithra returned to Elmira. Her eyes burned like coals, and the wind followed her every step. The village that had once driven her away was now witnessing a nightmare come true. The ground cracked, the well water turned to blood, and the night never passed. In one night, Elmira turned into a dead city. Few survived, fleeing without turning their heads. Lilithra erected a tower from the rubble of Elmira. She called it the Tower of Revenge. It was from there that she began to learn more deeply about black magic, to go through the old records Moretta had left behind, and to open a gateway to another world. Chapter 4. Offer from Faceless Entities. The shadow entity reappeared in his dream, offering even more power, control over time, soul, and death. But this time, there was a more expensive price. He had to give up the last piece of his humanity. Lilithra hesitated. She began to dream about Moretta, about the peaceful life she might be able to achieve. But the world had not forgotten her. The kingdom of Virelda, the great land to the north, began to send troops to investigate the destruction of Elmira. On the brink of attack, Lilithra accepted the offer. She opened a portal to the shadow world, and from it came the unforgiving creatures of darkness. With her new powers, Lilithra created the first spell that changed everything, Nadra Zepven Moore. With this spell, she wrapped the entire southern region in eternal mist. The seasons no longer changed, and the sunlight became a memory. Virelda's army that came was gone one by one. Only one person survived, a young soldier named Kaelen. He returned to the palace with terrible news about the Shadow Witch. In the Crystal Palace of Virelda, the royal advisors panicked. The king of Elvirian summoned all the bright magicians, healers, and guardians of the book to find out who Lilithra was. The name began to appear in the old prophecies as child of the starless night. The royal princess, Elenya, vowed to stop the witch. She was the last remaining Witch of Light, educated by the Order of White Victory. Together with Kaelen and a select group of knights, they headed south. On the way, Elenya met an old hermit named Ferodin, the guardian of ancient light. Virelda told her that the only way to stop Lilithra was to find the Mirror of Souls, an ancient artifact that could reveal one's true form. Meanwhile, Lilithra had built an army of darkness, shadow wolves, faceless humans, and millipedes that could infiltrate dreams. Elenya's army arrived at the Red River, a place now filled with haunting spirits. Lilithra's curse made the river a sea of blood. The first battle broke out. Kaelen was seriously injured, and Elenya was nearly caught in an illusion. However, with the help of Virelda, they escaped and found clues to the location of the Mirror of the Soul at the bottom of the ruins of the old temple swallowed by the earth. Meanwhile, in the northern sky, the gods of light held a trial. They considered blotting out the human world because it was too dark. One goddess named Lysandra, however, gave time. If Elenya failed to stop Lilithra, then the world would be wiped out. Lilithra built a palace from the shadow itself. She was now stronger than before, but in her heart, Moretta's whispers were still alive. She began to hesitate, and the shadow of the third self was even more dominant. The palace summoned the broken souls, making them new creatures. Lilithra called them Orphanum, an army of lost souls who wept in silence. Within the Order of Light, betrayal ensued. Some bright magicians were seduced by Lilithra's power. They formed a new clan, the Ashes Clan, which was neutral to light and dark. Elenya had to face betrayal from within and lost many allies, but her resolve did not waver. She managed to find the Mirror of the Soul and bring it to the center of the fog. Lilithra looked into the Mirror of Souls. There she saw her old self, the little girl who only wanted to be loved. Her tears fell, and the fog began to subside, but the third self was angry. He decided to take over Lilithra's body completely. A great war ensued between the two sides in the witch. The internal battle made Lilithra almost devastated. In her inner world, she met Moretta. The figure of the old grandmother gave her a choice: to let the world be destroyed, or to sacrifice strength in order to save other souls. Lilithra chose to release the power. The third self refused to surrender. It burned everything in eternal fire. Elenya and her army arrived in time. In the final battle, Lilithra and Elenya united to trap the third self in the vortex of time. With the final spell, Lilithra mouthed, "Moretta, I'm home," and her body turned to light, blotting out all traces of darkness. The world recovered slowly again. The fog cleared, and the land grew green again. Elenya returned to Virelda, bringing Lilithra's story as a lesson to future generations. But on a certain night, in a silent forest that had been peaceful, a gentle voice was often heard. "I'm not bad, I'm alone." And the wind whispered, remembering the witch who once shook the world.